Okay, so I've not done a video for a while, but in this series of videos I thought I'd talk about computer upgrades, how you can upgrade the heart of your simulator and really make it fly. Okay, so I've not done a video for a while, and the reason for that was I started to upload a number of videos, and I looked for videos online about building the channel. You wouldn't believe how many videos there are about making videos for YouTube and other channels, and they give quite a lot of, I think, quite good advice. So focus on the needs of and the information wanted by the watcher. I've always tried to do that, make sure that it's about the information and the person that's viewing the video. I've also tried to do that, and I think some of the information hopefully has been quite useful. But then in the last session I did about 4 videos in one go, because the instruction videos, the advice videos, said that you should create a number of videos and then hold them back and then upload them, and then keep uploading them on a regular basis to keep the subscribers and the channel interested in, to grow the channel. And I think that irritated me a bit, because what I realized, at least part of what I was doing, was I was making videos for the sake of making videos. And frankly, I think you see that quite a lot on YouTube, where people seem to be coming up with any and all weird and wonderful reasons to make a video, and that's not what I wanted this channel to be about. Kind of like when you want to get married to someone that you really love and you want to spend your life with, but then the wedding day, the logistics of the day, take over the point of the marriage. So I decided to pause and just think about whether I wanted to do the videos. And I do enjoy doing the videos, and I hope they add value. So I'd be really interested in any comments that you've got on the video, on the earlier videos, whether you think there are other things that I could or should cover that you would be interested in. Feel free to subscribe, and I understand if you tick the bell, then you'll get updates whenever I upload updated or new videos. So in this series of videos, I thought I'd talk about how you might upgrade the heart of your simulator, which is the computer. And in my case, 2 computers, as I've said in previous videos, one running the main simulator and the other one running the peripherals, the panels and the weather and the ATC and what have you. So there are a number of things you can upgrade in and around the computer. They are dependent sometimes on other elements of the computer, so you might need to think about upgrading more than one, depending what you've got in the computer already. I think it's actually relatively straightforward. I would say that because I've got quite a lot of experience of upgrading computers, but I really think that if you follow the manual and you take your time, it is really genuinely quite straightforward. I think deciding what you're going to upgrade, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult parts of the whole exercise, and taking things methodically and making sure you check back with the manual is the only other thing that I would say is critical, because otherwise you'll end up troubleshooting and going back to square one again to find out why it isn't working. So the first thing to do is to find out what's actually in your computer, and there are a number of programs that will help you with that. The one that I would recommend, the one that I use, is a program called CPU-Z. And CPU-Z is free to download. you simply download it, open it, and here it is. And it has a number of tabs which will give you information on each of the components, the parts of your computer. So the first tab here is the CPU, the central processor unit, and that's kind of the heart of your simulator, the thing that does all of the calculations, does all the processing, the thing that describes how quickly those calculations can be done. And on this tab you'll see the make of the CPU that's currently in your machine, the number of it, so what series, how new it is. And you should look on the end. If it's got a K on the end, the K means that the processor itself, the speed at which it can talk to the computer, isn't locked, which means if you want to do some more advanced work like overclocking it later to make it go a bit faster, then the K means that you'll have the capability and the flexibility to do that. So when you're buying a new processor, in my opinion, you should always look for one with the K. They can be a little bit more expensive, but in my opinion it's worth every penny. And on this tab you'll also see the code name, and you'll see that Intel in particular have quite imaginative names for their computers, Coffee Lake, Kaby Lake. That just tells you what model and how modern the CPU is. And the most important bit on this tab really is the socket type. A socket type is the kind of arrangement of pins on the CPU, and you need the same arrangements of pins on the motherboard so that it simply slots in and will work. I think motherboard manufacturers and processor manufacturers can be a bit cynical, and quite often you'll find you have to upgrade the motherboard in order to put a much newer processor in, and in my opinion that's simply part of that, at least, is to sell you a new motherboard. Although there will be, and we'll talk on the next tab that we talk about in detail, there are details around the way the motherboard talks to the CPU that will be different depending how modern and how fast the central processor unit is. So moving left to right, the second tab just talks about a cache, and that's really just a piece of memory that enables information to move backwards and forwards between the CPU and the motherboard and other peripherals. So we're not going to talk about any detail today. The next tab that you're going to be interested in is called the main board, or you might hear this referred to as the motherboard. The flat arrangement of processors and connections that really holds all of the different peripherals together. Everything plugs into the main board or the motherboard. Again, you will see on here that this will talk about the make and the model of the motherboard, and also the chip set. And the chip set is just the series of instructions that's loaded on the motherboard, the program that allows the motherboard to work. And the chipset will really be critical in terms of what graphics cards and what CPU you want to attach to that motherboard. And on the right hand side here you can see there's a thing called rev, which is the revision. So within a series of a motherboard there might be newer revisions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you might want to search on Google and find out which revision maybe is the newest or the most stable before you buy a new motherboard. And the last bit on this tab is the BIOS. So the BIOS is the input-output system, the system that enables the motherboard to speak to the processor and the computer. And actually, when it starts, before the operating system, so Windows is an operating system, before the operating system kicks in, the BIOS is what allows the motherboard to actually work. And then at the bottom you'll see the graphics interface, and again this is quite important for some of the newer graphics card because you will need a PCIe slot for some of the newer cards if you wanted to upgrade the graphics processor unit, the GPU. Okay, so the next tab is memory. So the important number at the top here, or type of memory, is it will have 3 letters and a number. So DDR2 is quite unlikely, I think. DDR3 is possible depending which motherboard you've got, and DDR4. So again, that's the series of the memory that you've got. You'll also hear this referred to as RAM. You also on this tab have got on the right side whether it's single or double, so whether you've got one piece of memory or two. Two running in parallel is a bit faster. That's just two modules installed in the computer. Most motherboards will have 4 module slots lined up, and you can have up to 4 of these RAM modules installed of different sizes. And the tab here says which size of memory you've got. So in my case, I've just got 1 module installed, partly because my motherboard just doesn't seem to like to run with dual modules. And this module is 32 gigabytes. So the next tab is associated also with the memory. You don't need to worry about this really, but this will tell you how many modules you've currently got installed. So if you tick and click through these particular tabs, you'll see on mine that each one is empty except for the one that comes up with the one module that I've got installed. Okay, now the next and the last tab that you'll really be interested in, specifically on CPU-Z, is the graphics card. So in this case, the graphics card, it will tell you the make and model and the details and the speed of that card. So in this case, it's a 1080 Ti. And if you wanted to upgrade the graphics card, you'd want to know whether there was a better version of that graphics card, a later model, and then it's worth looking at comparisons to see whether it's actually worth the effort to upgrade it. Graphics cards, the graphics processing unit GPU is arguably one of the most straightforward upgrades, although I'll talk a bit later about the connections that you might need for power. And I mentioned before, you'll need to make sure you've got the right graphics card slot if you want to go up a number of generations on graphics cards. And the last 2 tabs, so there's one about benchmarking, and again, we're not going to deal with that in this series, but that just lets you know how fast your computer is compared to other computers. And then the last tab is just about the program, the version of the CPU-Z that you've got, and just general details about whether you need to upgrade the program itself. That was CPU-Z, and that will give you all the details of the components that are in your computer and how they relate together. So I was thinking how the best way to approach this would be, and it does turn out to be much more complicated than I thought it was when I think about what goes into an upgrade and how to describe it. I think it is still quite doable. I don't think you need to have any particular skills. All you need to do is remain methodical, but there are a number of options that you need to consider beforehand, as I say, in deciding what you want to upgrade and how it will work with other elements of the computer if you also wanted to swap those out. So I was thinking what the best way to break this down would be. So I thought I'd do a number of short videos that will talk about different elements of the computer and the upgrade. So in the first one, I'm going to talk about the case and some of the wider elements that you will need to consider, like the power unit and what connections, USB connections, and you might want to build in, and also a little bit about the hard disk and or the DVD, or you can get a solid state drive, which is just another form of hard disk. So you might want to think about those, and they're all kind of loosely called peripherals. So in the first video, I'll talk about the kind of the case and the peripherals. In the second video, I thought I'd talk about the CPU, the central processor unit, and what you might want to consider if you're thinking about upgrading the CPU. Then I thought I'd talk about the main board or the motherboard, particularly since depending how many series and how much you move forward with the CPU, you might just end up having to upgrade the motherboard as well, as I said earlier, because of the socket type. In the fourth video, I thought I'd talk about the RAM, the random access memory, the memory modules, and what you might be able to do or want to do to upgrade the RAM. And RAM is possibly one of the easiest and a quite effective upgrade, where you can fairly easily swap out the memory modules if that's what you wanted to do. And then the last one I'd talk about, I thought, was the graphics card, the GPU, the graphics processing unit. Again, that is one of the more straightforward updates, I think, that you can do. But you just need to think about, in that one, in the first video, I'll talk about the power unit, what power connections you've got for the graphics card, and also in relation to what I said in CPU-Z about the chipset, and more importantly the slots that are available, the graphics card slot, whether that's appropriate for the graphics card that you want to install. So let's see if that works. I hope that works. I'll try and break it down into to kind of layman's terms. I think that ought to be, I think that will enable you to dig in or dip into different elements of the upgrade as you think you need to, and I think it will avoid, hopefully, the video A being too long and B being too difficult to follow, as everything kind of crosses over between the different components. So that's all I've got for you in this video. Hope that was helpful. As I say, any comments welcome. Feel free to subscribe and click the bell if you want to be updated as new videos are uploaded. I'll catch you next time. The motherboard nope.